Hey, everybody, it's Reggie with Lawyer Interviews. Today, we have the honor of speaking with divorce attorney Jill Coil out of Salt Lake City, Utah. Jill and I break down the biggest case that has hit the platform since, I don't know, O.J. Simpson. We're talking about Johnny Depp and Amber Heard and all of the interesting litigation strategies we saw, what worked, what didn't work, and what it's going to do for the practice of law going forward. So we hope you enjoy the interview, and thanks for watching. Hey, everybody, it's Reggie with Lawyer Interviews, and today we are honored to have our very special guest from the same state as me, Jill Coil from Salt Lake City, Utah. Hi, Jill. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me today.
Oh, it's wonderful having you. We should have done this in person.
I know. I didn't realize that you're in Utah too. So This is awesome.
Yeah, it's awesome. Well, and I'm excited to have you on here too, because there's been some really, really big, celeb news and everything in the family law area. But first, I'd like you to introduce our viewers to your areas of practice.
Sure. So my name is Jill Coil. I am licensed in both Texas and Utah. And I started a family law firm here in Utah in 2014. And we have now grown to the largest family law firm in the state. And we primarily focus on family law. So everything divorce, custody. We do a lot of juvenile. We do protective orders, domestic violence protection, stuff like that. I really wanted to focus my area on one thing because I wanted to be the expert and the best in an area of law versus, the person that does everything and never masters a subject. So that's what we've done. I've also started the first female-founded personal injury firm in Utah as well. So Moxie Law Group is the first female-founded personal injury. As you know, because you live in Utah, you drive up and down our freeways and you see lots of personal injury attorneys, and none of them are women. So I kind of wanted to highlight the women that work in that field and do an amazing job at it. And so we started Moxie Law, and we now are actually expanding to Texas, and we've opened the doors for Moxie and Coil Law in Dallas so far. So things are growing, and we're excited to take Texas by storm next.
I love it. And, girl power, I love it.
Yeah.
So that's so impressive and exciting. And yeah, I will be excited to see more females, represented, as attorneys on the side of the freeway with Moxie Law. So
Absolutely.
Can't wait to disrupt the billboards. Well, Jill, so one thing that has been just all over the news over the past, 6 weeks is this huge, Johnny Depp, Amber Heard, Sun newspaper trial.
Right.
And obviously it brings up, it was, a civil suit for defamation, but it brings up, the original divorce and what, slander, libel, just so many things, and domestic violence issues. I mean, what was your take on the hype going around, because you practice, the domestic area of law? What was your impression of the circus?
Well, it's so funny because, I'm on social media, but I've never really, been popular on it. I do it because I want to reach as many people, but I did a video just, several weeks back about my opinion of what was going to happen in the case, because defamation, though it's not directly involved with divorce, this case specifically, I felt was in my area of expertise. And so I felt like I could offer a pretty reliable opinion. Right. So I did a video, had no idea that it was going to go viral and have now over 4 million, views on all different platforms. And because of that, people were really coming to me to kind of break down my take of the Johnny Depp Amber Heard trial. When that very first video, I was like, I don't think he's going to win on defamation. It's really high standard in the United States with freedom of speech. I had been following the London case very closely, and I had read that judge's 55-page opinion on that. So I said, he's got a really hard uphill battle. And so my take was, I don't think that either of them are going to win, but at the end of the day, I think Johnny Depp's going to win in the eyes of the public opinion, which is really what I believed he was doing this trial for.
Right.
my opinion shifted throughout the case in the fact that the evidence was really weighted heavily on discrediting Amber Heard. I mean, it was pretty intense about how much it showed that she was lying, how they were able to catch the lies, the witnesses that were able to come forward, and then her inability to take any accountability in the situation. So my final opinion at the end of the case before the jury came down was that Johnny Depp actually could win.
Mm-hmm.
And he did. He ended up winning, a $10 million judgment. 8.3 million is what it ends up doing on the offset. So my whole take with the circus is that it was, first of all, a really good example of, I think, celebrity prowess, media power.
Mm-hmm.
But I also felt like it was a good example of how Amber Heard used media to really hurt Amber Heard. Yes. And the media then was able to help Johnny Depp kind of reclaim that. So, so it was an interesting circus, and it's still going forward because now Amber Heard's getting paid to do these televised primetime series. And I'm laughing because everybody's like, oh, she's going to be on NBC, I think on Friday. I'm like, she got probably paid $1 million to do that.
Right. I mean, and you look at the outcome too. I mean, I think it's interesting you mentioned that, no accountability during the trial. I feel like the subsequent interviews are also very deflective of any self accountability or reflection. It's like, well, they did a good job of, swaying the jury and stuff. I'm like, well, the evidence is the evidence, the facts are the facts. And, as good as any lawyer can be, you can't change bad facts, right?
Right. But it's so interesting because I go to trial all the time, and a lot of my trials are done on credibility. It's who you believe more, because in divorce, everybody lies.
Right.
And in this case, I was like, she's lying.
Mm-hmm.
And, what's going to happen behind that? And in this situation, she was told it's not okay to lie. And I'm grateful for that, because there is no accountability in my line of work when people lie. They do it all the time on protective orders. It says right there, under perjury.
Mm-hmm.
Financial declarations. You have to sign one of those in every divorce, that what you're putting on that is true and fair. And we always find lies. We always uncover half truths. And there is what I feel no accountability. So I was really grateful as an attorney to see that maybe we can start pressing these judges to be a little bit more, aware and punishing. I mean, and not really punish, but just if you're going to lie and it's going to affect the other person, you should have some kind of accountability.
Right.
And I watched Amber Heard's, last, her morning interviews that she did the last couple of days. And I agree with you.
Mm-hmm.
These are the time for her to have, contrition and a little bit of remorse and, hey, I would have done things differently, but there's just none. I mean, it's continuous deflection, and she refuses to take any part in the abuse or the volatile relationship her and Johnny had, which it's like the evidence was there, like the videos, the recordings were there to show how volatile and how manipulative she was. And all she would have to do is come out and say, yeah, I made some mistakes too.
Right.
But she didn't.
Right. And I think it's such an interesting and important point too, is that someone can be both a victim and also a perpetrator of, domestic violence. And I think that was some of the problem I think the jury faced too, is, on the believability side. So I think it really brought to light, I know that there's been talk about, believing victims and what does this do to victims, but I know that, you can be both a victim, but you can also be, someone who also took part in some abuse yourself. And, it's a hard line. What do you think about that? What it does to victims? And I
mean, I absolutely understand why we need Me Too, and I'm fully supportive of it. Especially women in Hollywood and in that field needed to step up, and men of power need to not be able to abuse. And but then you have to strip back the victims of like real life, the people that don't have money, don't have power, and are victims of domestic violence. A lot of people are, especially Amber Heard is saying this is going to stop women in having a voice.
Right. That's one of her arguments. I mean, she's
Yeah.
literally saying that it's going to stifle victims from coming forward.
And I just don't think that's true. Like, we're down here in reality.
Right.
And those victims are still coming through. The judges are going to still sign protective orders. We're still going to do what we need to do to protect these women or these people that are being victims of domestic violence.
Right.
She's not in reality like that. This is an outlier case that went very, very public. And I think that what it's going to do, though, is show that if you're in a high power position, you better be careful. I think what's the problem is, and what we've seen is Me Too down here is working.
Right.
Like companies are hiring, people to make sure that harassment and sexual harassment in the workplace is gone.
Right.
It's working. Up here in, the reality of the, rich and powerful, it's the Me Too movement kind of swung the pendulum in the fact that it's being abused. I mean, you see these very rich people being sued all the time now for sexual harassment. Cristiano Ronaldo is an example, and he was being sued the last 2 years by this woman who claims that he raped her. He claimed it was consensual sex.
Right.
And, and in a settlement, he ended up paying her money because he felt like that was better. And then selfishly, she hired an attorney and went to sue him for more money.
Right.
And that judge just dismissed that case and actually rebuked the attorney that took the case and said, how dare you bring in client confidential settlement negotiations into this court case? I felt like that's what this case is doing, is it's making courts aware that the Me Too movement is being used when there's money and power involved to help people, and it's allowing people to lie. And those are the cases that are going to have to really be scrutinized. And, and I'm not saying we need to protect the rich and powerful. What we need to do, though, is protect, get somewhere in the balance to where they realize they're not going to get away with crap. But at the end of the day, it's not allowing these frivolous lawsuits to just go forward and these rich people having to pay because they're rich.
Being targeted. Exactly. And I like you had a video where you talked about believability and perjury. And I know that, everyone growing up in the 90s, knew perjury because of Bill Clinton and, his testimony to Congress. And, people think, oh, perjury, it's this big crime. And, I'm a trial lawyer too. And I don't think I've ever actually seen perjury charged from a trial. But I've actually, had people, impeaching a witness, showing them, they testify one thing, you show them the document, and you're like, that's not what you said, it's right here. And, that's perjury, right? But I've never actually seen a judge in my practice, I don't know if you have, actually do anything about it. As far as are you going to bring perjury charges?
I have never seen a prosecutor come forward and claim perjury.
Right.
And people, like I said, we've on multiple occasions, I've gone to trial and proved lies, deceitfulness. And, I just recently in a big case had finally a commissioner, a opposing party had doctored an email.
Oh.
And submitted it to the court and had used it in 4 hearings to fight against my client. I mean, just the fighting alone probably cost her $65,000.
Oh my God.
And each time we were able to discredit it, after those hearings, we were able to find out he doctored the email and we got the original email.
Right.
And for the first time in my career, we were able to file rules, sanctions against this party, and the judge held, sanctioned them.
Yeah, absolutely.
But at the end of the day, I think he only ordered $6,000 in attorney fees, which isn't even compared to what we had to keep fighting.
Right.
And at the end of the day, there's no prosecutor coming forward to for perjury. I've never seen it happen. That's why a lot of people didn't like my video about, I don't think Amber Heard will be charged with perjury.
Yeah.
The other thing is you have to remember, if somebody's charged criminally, then the intent is to put them into jail.
Right.
Amber Heard doesn't need to go to jail.
No. Right. Exactly. Well, and it's hard for clients too. I've had clients who are like, oh my God, the other party is lying. Like they're obviously lying. What do we do about it? With the perjury, I'm like the result of perjury these days is you win. I mean, you win on that issue probably. If they're perjuring themselves, if you can prove it, if you can prove they've forged documents, get an adverse inference or whatever, sanctions, that is the result is, some kind of sanction on the other side. But criminally, it just doesn't happen. And I know it technically is illegal, but I just, it's kind of one of those myths of litigation that it does piss people off.
And it's, at the end of the day, it's not fair, but we all lie.
Right.
I mean, we all tell ourselves white little lies. We all say things that we're like, oh, that's not 100% true.
Mm-hmm.
And when it comes to court hearings, I mean, obviously you're in the most intense and emotional state of your life dealing with whatever you're dealing with. So you say and do things that probably aren't appropriate, but
right.
If you have a good attorney, my biggest thing with my cases is I tell all my clients, if we're going to trial, you're going to be the best and most credible party there. You're going to have nothing to hide, and your truth is going to be the reason why you come out prevailing. So, we overshare, we make sure that the court has every document to show what we're doing.
Right.
So at the end of the day, the court looks at my client and says, if it has to come down to just believing one or the other, I want them to believe my client.
Right. And I think that's so important too, that client control, right? I mean, I guess as an attorney, it takes quite a bit of control over your client to tell them, do this, do not do that. And that brings up the Amber Heard, defense. I thought there was a lot, at least from my appearance, a lot of lack of client control there. Even just some faces she would make or some of the demeanor, like I didn't feel like her attorneys had very good control over their own client and some of their own witnesses too, like either in preparation or just saying, hey, like, don't
agree
out loud.
I agree. I mean, like when you hire experts, those experts are getting paid a lot of money to help you in court, but
right.
You're always sitting with your expert before these trials and making sure you understand what they're going to testify to. Their expert, Dr. Spiegel, was a joke.
Right.
And then I assume that her attorney is not as bad as the media wants to portray. She's been around a really long time, and I'm always going to support women, female lawyers, because she was around in a time when she was an absolute minority in the field. So I'm going to support Elaine, but at the end of the day, I have to think that she sat down and talked to Amber about tails and what she needs to do. But what frustrated me is either Amber just completely disregarded it, or she didn't go far enough to tell Amber why she could lose the case.
Right.
One of the things that is really important, especially in these kind of cases, is setting expectations.
Mm-hmm.
Like I tell my clients, hey, there's a good chance you're not going to win this issue. And this is why.
Right.
Or a defamation case. Like I think they went into this case just completely believing that it was going to go this exact same way as the British trial.
Right.
And they were just going to walk into a dismissal. So there was no expectation that there was a possibility that they could lose.
Right.
And halfway through the case, their complete strategy should have changed, because they should have seen with the media and what was coming down that there was a chance that this jury could be persuaded that she defamed him. And they should have changed completely to, now we need to explain to them credibility. We need to really work on making sure that we've got a solid defense. And they just didn't. They just didn't. And they even had a week in the middle. Remember when they took a break to really think about strategy. So I was really disappointed about that. But the other thing I'm suspecting, so there has been information that has come out that Amber Heard had an insurance policy on her house, that the insurance covered this kind of legal defense.
Really interesting.
And if like when you work for an insurance company, you're capped at how much money you're given. So it's never a great case if you're working for the insurance, because when you bill $400 an hour, the insurance will probably only pay you $180.
Right.
So my other thought is if that's true, and I haven't really been able to confirm that, but that's been some reports that have come out.
Mm-hmm.
they didn't have the time and resources to do what Johnny Depp's team did. Because Johnny, I'm sure, spent $10 million on his case.
Easy. Absolutely.
You know, and I know that it's sad when you say, well, you know, you get what you pay for, but I'm telling you, I tell people all the time, you get what you pay for. If you want to get a divorce attorney and you're worried about my fees, you know, it's telling you something.
Yes. I similar, you know, a little bit different, but similar to, you know, I'll have, you know, clients go to, you know, some of these legal sites that offer, you know, templates or whatever. And, you know, I'm like, you can either pay me to do it right the first time or pay me double when I have to fix it. Right. Because it's going to be double the hours, fix it, redo. And I can't tell you how many times people come back and they're like, you were right. And I'm like, I don't want to gloat because honest to God, like I'd rather do it right the first time too. Cause I don't, you know, it takes me more time. And same, you know, you do pay for, you do end up reaping what you sow in litigation. And, you know, Johnny's team, I'm sure had, you know, definitely more funds and everything too. And it was just really interesting. I like your perspective of the fact that these individuals, all of them, you know, the defense, the plaintiffs, they all had a chance to recourse and, you know, re-strategize. How many of us would love to have, you know, that kind of opportunity to say like, okay, here's kind of maybe what the jury is thinking because the real world is reacting in real time. We don't get that luxury. I love it. I would love it to be like, okay, now regroup and here's what's going on. I mean, what's your take on the media aspect of strategy?
I think that was smart on the judge's part. And the reason why is because I'm sure she had read the 55-page opinion from UK. And I'm sure she, you know, had a perspective of this case at the beginning thinking this is, you know, but these are very famous people that are in public that are claiming that they have been destroyed. Their reputation has been destroyed because of what was put out publicly.
Right.
So I don't, you know, Amber's team filed a motion to not allow it to be public, and Johnny's team said, no, that this should be not just, you know, this should be a juror of our peers and the rest of the world should see.
Right.
And the judge agreed with them. And I love this judge. I felt like she did such a good job. She helped and opened the window for Amber Heard to get her defamation claim that came through. Like, so she was very even keel. She was very fair. I felt like she handled the circus very, very well.
Yes, absolutely.
But I really do feel like it was necessary. I you know, most court proceedings, most people don't recognize this, but most court proceedings are public.
Right. You
can go to a divorce trial and sit in the pews
for First Amendment reasons. That's why they're open to the public. Yep.
So that's normal. So, you know, I guess not having a camera and having it streamed on YouTube is normal. But I know that was the easiest way because somebody else would have been in there doing it anyway. So I felt like it was necessary, and obviously it was fun for us all to watch.
Right. Well, I grew up, you know, I mean, and I'm sure you remember it too, the OJ Simpson when, you know, growing up, and that was kind of my first, you know, exposure to, you know, a trial circus, right? I mean, just the media, everyone was just, you know, so involved, and to get to see that real time, you know, rather than just a court sketch, get to see lawyers actually advocating in real time and what that looks like. It's a very different, I mean, and even, you know, probably what we all do day to day looks a little different than the Johnny Depp trial, but it was so neat to see a real life courtroom situation. And I wonder what this trial will do for maybe future, you know, litigators or future attorneys out there. What do you think? Do you think it's going to spark any new careers in law?
Yes, I do. I think we'll actually see an uptick in the next year or so of law school applicants. Yeah. Which is good because, you know, law school applicants have been going down. I think that it did spark a very good interest in good old fashioned law. I mean, I grew up on LA law. I wanted to be a lawyer since I was little, and I watched this trial just thinking this is this is real life. And I was excited because I wanted people to because a lot of people just get their law from, Boston Legal or The Good Wife. Like those shows don't depict, truth. Or Lincoln Lawyer. I just finished that show. That was a great show. But
is it good?
Oh, it was great. I loved it.
Okay.
But it's not reality to what we do every day. And I felt like this was really great to kind of show like that that was a real life court trial. Like, that's what we deal with as lawyers on a day-to-day basis. And it was done and it was fun to watch.
It was, and made my little heart, geek out a little too when I, hear things, or, I'd hear it. I'm like, oh, that's a good objection, or, that was a good statement. I'm like, oh, or don't ask a question you don't want that answer to.
Yeah.
A few times, you're coaching from the couch. I don't know. I was doing that. I don't know if you were, but I'm like, no, bad objection.
Well, I was so confused when Amber was testifying about why, Johnny's attorneys were not objecting to narrative, they would ask a question and she would never answer the actual question. So I always was, I kind of in the beginning was like, what are they doing? And then now I'm like, I know exactly that the more she talked, the worse it hurt her.
Yeah.
And Elaine should have cut her off and said, okay, I'm just going to, take you through her story. But what I noticed is I felt like Elaine didn't even have grasp of the timeline very well. So she struggled in curtailing her client in the timeline. And that, it just hurt her. So yeah, I was the same way. I was like, when Johnny was on the stand and they kept objecting to hearsay. It was just so funny. It was
yeah. I have never ever seen a lawyer object to their own question. You know what I mean? I'm like, wait, what? It was the most like confusing objection heard around the world.
Right. Exactly. So, the only time us attorneys object and is when they become a hostile witness, which means that they're your witness and they turn on you basically on the stand. And then you're like, oh, Your Honor, I want to treat this as a hostile witness, and you get to go into more of a cross. So I agree. I've never seen that before. It was It was funny.
Right. Well, it was definitely an interesting look too at the different styles of litigators too, or just different styles of questioning a witness, whether they keep the question short, direct, or, open the door. It was a very good, I think of the TMZ expert or I guess witness, not expert, witness who was in there. And there was a point where he had like a mic drop moment against Elaine. And I was like, don't ever ask, that question of like, don't you think you're getting your 15 minutes of fame? And he just turned around and said, well, I could say the same about you. You're getting your, your practice. And I was just like, not that it was anything pivotal in the case, obviously, but that witness just made that attorney look like trash. Right. And so it's like the different styles, like, don't let him get a word in, like, don't cut him off.
When you're doing cross-examination, like they're yes or no questions and you get to control the narrative. So when she asked that these open-ended, I'm like, you're not following the laws of, of what we are taught as a good cross-examination. I agree, which I actually, his testimony, the TMZ person, I believe was the pivot in the case. I believe that was the hammer that ended up swaying the jury. When they found out that Amber had leaked the story and not TMZ, I felt like that was the turning point that the jury just said, we can't believe anything she says, because she lied about that on the stand. She says, I didn't leak the story. Then we have a TMZ witness to say, yes, she did. TMZ did not. So.
Right. And that's the thing is even if, XYZ is true, credibility really does come down to the end of it, and that the weight of the evidence, but the credibility of that person's evidence. And jurors are faced with a very, very hard and difficult decision in that kind of a situation. But I have one more question on this credibility thing, because both of these two are actors, and, acting as a trial lawyer does come into play a little bit. We all have to put on a little bit of, razzle dazzle and show. But what was your take on the fact that you had two pretty high profile actors, and what kind of impact that had on the jury, if any?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that you could see Amber Heard acting. I mean, you felt it like she was crying, but no tears were coming down. I mean, there was all the telltale signs of that she was not being truthful in her statements and sincere. Johnny Depp, we've seen him on so many movies, and what we saw on the stand is not the Johnny Depp that we know on the screen. And so I felt like he came across way more credible in the fact that it was like a whole new person we were seeing. You know, when he was talking about his drugs and some of the things he was saying, he was very, you know, you could tell he was embarrassed by it, by looking down, and you know, he was very contrite. And so, you know, if it was an acting job, great job, Johnny. But, you know, we've seen Johnny in so much, we've known him for so many years. We've seen him on red carpets, and I've never seen that Johnny. And so I felt like either he played the role of his life, or that really is who he is. And it was refreshing to see that a little bit.
Right. And of course, you know, Amber's team says, oh, you know, he acted the role of this. I mean, that's kind of been one of the you know, press headlines, as he did a good job acting this role. And I think as good as anyone is as an actor, I think that there are some things you just can't act your way out of. And I tended to believe, I don't know, his testimony. I felt like you said, there's, as an attorney over the years, there are telltale signs that a witness will give when they're lying, when they're faking it, when they're exaggerating, when they're not being sincere. And, you know, especially if you've got a good rapport of questioning. And I didn't, there were a lot of times I just did not believe Amber. And as much as, you know, you're wanting to root for kind of the underdog in certain situations, it was just, I could tell too, like there were so many issues and lies that, you know, she got caught in, and it just came to her demise. So,
well, and Johnny Depp, I mean, he was stripped naked. I mean, we know everything about him now. His abuse in his childhood, like I could have never told you that. His alcohol use, his sobriety. I mean, it all came out. Stuff that, you know, I'm sure tried to bury in the media, and
every relationship he's been in, you know. You know,
and he, you know, he made the choice to put it all out there, so that at least the truth would be shown on the fact. And I said this in a lot of my videos, and I got a lot of backlash on this because people didn't like this, but he committed domestic violence against Amber as well. You know, we don't have evidence he physically hit her. But, you know, I have said all along, domestic violence can be emotional, physical, financial, you know, abuse. And there were things that he did in those videos that I would consider abuse.
Absolutely.
And would warrant the protective order that was entered against him in the very beginning. So he's not innocent in the situation, but we now know is she is not the victim. Like you said, like she was a victim, but she was a perpetrator as well. And you know, we have evidence she physically hit him. And you know, and I think the other bombshell in this case that really irked me was she got the protective order in place, and then, you know, shows up in San Francisco to talk to him face to face. You know, as I do protective orders all the time, I have seen this where they filed a protective order, and then they're texting their ex trying to get them to talk to him. And I'm like, you know, that as an attorney drove me crazy. And we use that all the time as reasons to dismiss the protective orders. And I felt like that was the other bombshell that recording that Johnny put out there, that just showed she was using it for purposes of gain. You know, he specifically put in his divorce decree, if you agree to this, I will not sue you for anything, the things you've said through our divorce. He said that, like, there was clearly negotiation in their divorce that I will pay you to basically go away. And then she decided not to go away.
How common is, I guess, a clause like that in a divorce agreement, that, you know, kind of like global settlement, right? Like anything we could have brought, you know, about this. I mean, how common is that in regular divorce?
100% in all my divorces, I put a disclosure that everything's been settled. This is a global settlement. 100% of our divorces, we also put that there's a non-disparagement.
Right.
that neither of the parties can disparage each other, harass, commit domestic violence against each other, or support third parties from doing that. And we also put that it's on social media and email as well. So,
Right.
So 100% of my cases get those in their documents.
Very cool. And to let people out there know too, I mean, have you ever had to enforce those clauses in court?
All the time. And they're the hardest to prove because, it's a lot of times it's verbal but and I always say, like, we need to wait until we get a bunch of, because one nasty email or one Facebook post might not be enough. But yeah, I probably say that we file contempt with, failure to pay money. That's probably the number one, but the second would be the disparagement clauses.
Right. And people, people always think, freedom of speech, right? I'm like, not if you negotiate.
He could technically take her back in the divorce, and I don't think he will do this, but he could do a contempt action against her and hold her in contempt.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, it brings up so many different, you've got contracts, family law, you've got First Amendment, you've got so many issues that, focused on this case. And so I think it really was so fascinating for all of us, but I'm sure, especially for you in family law. Did your clients bring it up to you ever?
Not yet, but it's going to be interesting. Like, I don't know what you studied in appellate lit in your law school class, but I had to do my appellate lit case for the whole semester. This is where you write like an appellate brief for and behalf, like you usually start before and then you go behalf or whatever, was on the Janet Jackson scandal back in 2004, the halftime scandal.
Yeah,
that ages me. But, and it was just fascinating to research all the different aspects of it. And then we had to, the people that were for and then against.
Yeah.
This is going to be a law school case study that they are going to use for years to come, because like you said, it has a lot of elements of law and very, very good examples of what to do and not to do. I think that law schools are going to be using it as an appellate, like, did the jury get it right? They're going to use it as an argument. So I think it's going to go down in history as one of the teaching cases of the year.
I think so too. I could not agree more. Well, it's been wonderful. And thank you for breaking this down for us, because, you're the expert on this area, especially dealing with, very hard fought litigation. And we're excited to hear about Moxie Law and your practice. And I'd love to let our viewers know too, where they can find you on social media so that they can give you a follow.
Yeah, thank you. You just need to know my name. So Jill Coil, Coil. Jill Coil is on everything: Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. But then my law firm is Coil Law at .com, and then Moxie is just Moxie, Moxie lawgroup.com, and we've got a lot of exciting things. I also have a website, jillcoil.com, which is the easiest way to find everything I'm doing. And the last thing is I wrote a book called No One Dies from Divorce.
Oh, I love it. Very cool.
It's on Amazon, and it's just to kind of, from a lawyer's perspective, of how and what you should do through a divorce to not only survive it, but thrive through it. So
I love it. Well, everyone check out everything and check out her book. That's so amazing. When did you publish it? I'm just curious.
It's been a year now. We just celebrated our 1-year anniversary. So
congratulations.
Yeah, we're going to have an audio version of it, hopefully this summer. So.
Oh, awesome. Well, I love the title too.
Thank you so much.
True for people. Well, thank you, Jill. And thank you everyone for watching Lawyer Interviews, and we'll see you next time.